Cloudheim is a unique, wonderful player co-op action RPG game that blends unique physics-based combat with crafting and shopkeeping elements. Released on December 4 into early access, this game has you build a base and shop on the back of a giant flying turtle, which had me hooked from the get-go. So before we get into more detail, I almost exclusively play co-op and multiplayer games, and if you're anything like me, you know how hard it can be to find good multiplayer games that aren't a pain in the ass to play together. This video will be going over the good, the bad, and the ugly of what it's like to play Cloudheim in co-op, and my opinion on whether it's worth playing together in its current state. So to start things off, creating a world is easy, but it wasn't clear if you could rename or delete a world at this time. And just like other games of this genre, the server is only online if the one who created the world is online. Currently, I don't believe there is a way to host a dedicated server yet, and there's no info on if this will be a thing, but I assume it will be eventually. When you create a server, there is a bunch of settings that can be adjusted for the number of players, difficulty, and player interactability, which can all be adjusted freely after you've created the game, so no need to worry or restart if you think you've messed this up. Personally, I really liked being able to easily adjust the difficulty of mobs until we found an enemy difficulty we liked without needing to restart the game. Connecting to the server, however, was a little annoying, as even though there is a Friends tab to connect to servers, usually the server wouldn't appear at all, and so the host would have to personally invite the players through Steam. And as of right now, depending on when you're watching, currently there is no cross-world progression, however the devs have already stated they will be addressing this rather quickly. So when it comes to character customization, it's weirdly diverse, but also not. In my opinion, there is way too many alt characters and a severe lack of male options, which I could see could turn people off. And in fact, many Steam reviews echo this sentiment. Initially, I disliked not being able to create my own character, however, I did appreciate the unique character designs you get to play as, and all the unique skins that you can unlock as well. You can unlock skins by playing a character over time, however unfortunately this progress is only working for the host at this time. So hopefully the update with the cross-world progression will fix this, but I guess we'll see. There are also a ton of emotes, which are honestly impressive with the amount of effort that went into them, and they were really fun to mess around with. So one of the first things you'll be introduced to the game is combat, and honestly it might be the best feature of the game. Cloudheim has what they call a physics-based combat, so basically you can boop, kick, and lasso enemies into each other or things that will deal increasingly more damage. The more creatively you kill enemies, the better your score goes up and the better rewards you end up getting. And this led to a lot of chaotic fun. Depending on your server settings, you can also enable lassoing and kicking teammates, which can add more chaos to the fun as well. You also gain fun abilities based on the weapons you equip, as well as unlockable abilities when you level up your weapon masteries. Each weapon you find also comes with its own abilities, so you can have a lot of fun mix matching skills and weapons to fit the style you enjoy playing. As I stated earlier, if you find the game too easy or too hard, you can freely adjust the difficulty of the enemies from the escape menu as well. So when it comes to the world, I thought it looked beautiful, and genuinely I had a lot of fun running around and jumping and killing every enemy in sight. If you're someone who loves exploring and solving puzzles and finding hidden chests, you will have a blast with this game's world. I know a lot of people online have voiced their opinions about being upset that the world isn't an open world experience, and this did initially surprise me too, as I thought the game might be similar to something like a loft, where your base moves around and you use a glider to fly down off to the places you want to visit. However, this wasn't the case, which I honestly didn't really mind. However, the loading screens were pretty annoying as a result. Like, it takes forever to load once you press teleport, but then you still have a loading screen. If the devs could just reduce this issue somehow, it would be amazing for the longevity of the game. So instead of being an open world, you have these giant islands that you need to unlock by finding these world star fragments, kind of similar to Mario 64's star collecting system. Once you've found enough throughout the world that you can access, you can unlock the next zone and find more, etc. One thing I did find disappointing between the islands was the mobs were exactly the same, with maybe an exception or two. Like, I would really like to see the visual changes in this regard, since the combat was so much fun and versing different baddies would have continued that enjoyment. So when it comes to your base, well, first of all, it's a giant flying turtle and I'm absolutely here for it. When you first arrive, there are a ton of things to explore and chests to find, as well as a minigame if you can find it. There are NPCs scattered around the island with little lore pages usually nearby, which was nice and all, but I just wish it wouldn't clog your inventory and we had somewhere to put them instead. The NPCs so far don't really seem to do anything, and actually seem to be almost a remnant of an old system in the beta that we found out, but we will delve into that topic later. I did find it annoying that you can't use weapons at base, despite being the main place where you craft and upgrade weapons in the game, so as a result you couldn't try out any of the new skills that the weapons you just made came with. If they could just add a button to switch between hand mode and weapon mode, that would be great, or even just adding a training arena just to test combat whilst you're at the base would feel a lot better. While you're at base, a bunch of ore resources spawn around your island, and at first we thought we didn't have a mining pick to get it because we couldn't attack them. However, we found out you just have to either kick or use dodge roll to get them, and that felt a little silly. Your base also houses a massive field that lets you place all your crafting stations too. So when it comes to crafting stations, I thought Cloudheim had a really cool and unique take on it. Taking a step away from the normal menu crafting of most games, you instead hold down left click to insert 3 of a kind into a bench for it to start working. At first this felt a little tedious, but with the speed upgrades it felt a little better, and I appreciate the unique approach to this crafting in this way. As you play, you'll unlock these cute little guys called blins who can be assigned to benches or workstations that provided associated buffs. In terms of co-op, thankfully everyone could interact with everything, and you can even both interact with the storage chest at the same time. Crazy concept, right? So these crafting benches is where you'll be getting most of your gear, and upgrading your weapons was confusing at first, but you get the idea pretty quickly. Basically, when you create the same weapon over and over, there's a chance you get an upgrade to that weapon in your inventory. And if you didn't get an upgrade to that weapon, you instead get a duplicate that you can sell in the store instead. Weapons you find can be used by everyone, which was surprising. However, we did notice that weapons you find from chests or lockboxes showed up differently for the host and player too. This led to visual bugs such as the weapon my partner was using showing upgrades that I didn't have, and once we teleported, his visual upgrades would then sync to what I could see. This felt a little annoying, as you can imagine a lot of power is tied to these weapons, and hopefully they will fix this desync soon. And so while I was initially liking the crafting in this game, it wasn't until we locked the store later that my opinion changed, but I'll get to that soon. So after you've crafted a bunch of stuff, you gain the ability to sell them at your shop. So the shop part of Cloudheim was what I was most excited for, and I think there's a serious gap in the market for these types of games that include a shop element, such like Moonlighter, but for multiplayer. Where I thought the combat was the highlight of the game, sadly I felt the shop aspect was the worst. The shopkeeping element was initially fine, but albeit a bit slow. However, it wasn't until a good while that we accidentally discovered a whole separate plot on the island that unlocked a massive house that was intended to be the shop's location. Oops. This excited me as we could actually upgrade it to be bigger because we had actually leveled our shop a few times by then. However, you quickly realized how empty it was because buying tables was so increasingly expensive there was no way to quickly fill it up. Then this led to me heading to the tips section of the game, and this is where the confusion really began. The tips and tooltips in Cloudheim are either severely outdated for an old system or we just never figured it out. So the tooltips talk about how NPCs should be found walking around alchemy nooks, or how you can purchase milk from an NPC who should be in the kitchen. But these things just don't exist in this current build. So in our confusion, thinking we missed something crucial, that led us to joining the Discord, where we found out that things used to work a whole lot different in the beta, and that was only 4 months ago. Looking at old beta footage, we could see there used to be a pre-built store with unlockable benches that all had their matching playable characters to work at. And it looked great, honestly. However, it seemed like the player base didn't really like that you couldn't design your own store or move benches around to your liking, and I think this is where a big mistake came about. So the devs said they listened to the feedback of the beta players and turned the game into where you could now move around benches. However, instead of moving around the benches that they had in the beta, they were now these little blinn tree huts that looked pretty awkward when you put them in the store. I think it's great that they listen to the feedback, and I would have loved to been able to create my own layout too. However, I think its current iteration is a bit of a swing and a miss from what people were really asking for. I think the players just wanted to be able to pick up the benches the way they were and move them around, and not this tree hut system we currently have, because they just seem really awkward when you put them in the store, but then the store also just feels really empty as a result. I'm hoping the devs can take a step back and maybe meet somewhere in the middle. I honestly would prefer the beta build over what we have now, just because the island full of AFK NPCs seems very underutilized, and I would love to see them actually be part of the game instead. I think the blends can stay as part of bench upgrades and whatnot, but yeah, just I would really love to see them kind of meet in the middle of the two builds that the players have had access to. So my final verdict on the game, and is it worth playing together? I honestly think this game has a lot of potential. I really love the art style, the flying turtle, and the combat felt really fun and engaging. The combat and exploration of the game really stood out, and I did genuinely have a lot of fun playing in the world. There were lots of emotes which were fun to mess around with each other, and I did genuinely enjoy unlocking skins and working progress towards unlocking different characters. However, there were some hiccups with multiplayer that weren't quite the end of the world, but glitches with different loot and upgrades showing between the host and other players was quite annoying over time. It was disheartening that only the host could unlock skins over playtime. However, hopefully this will be fixed when the devs add that cross-world progression hotfix sometime soon. The shop was the thing I was most looking forward to, and the best way I can describe it in its current state is directionless. Sadly, I wish this wasn't the case, but I really hope they can fix this so I can come back and play some more. So again, I think the game has a lot of potential. However, I do feel like this felt like a very early access game, and so should you play Cloudheim together? In its current state, I would say probably wait for the issues I've mentioned to be ironed out, but it's definitely a game to keep an eye out, and I do genuinely look forward to playing again once the game is in a better state. This has just been my opinion, however, and if the issues I've mentioned don't turn you away, I definitely still think you'll have a blast playing Cloudheim. If you've made it this far, consider subscribing and leaving a like if you would like to see more videos like this, and leave me a comment below to let me know what your thoughts on the game are. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!